It's amazing. I love it. I mean, I love that it's like a periodic table of, human or universal
Yeah.
experience. The universe is not a place, right? It's not a big room in which things are happening. It's an ongoing creative process. We're basically expressing a 16th or 15th century worldview when we speak English. And so I encourage people to go outside, look under the night sky, and just feel what that feels like. Because when I'm stargazing with people, people get very quiet and they get very humble and they start asking these really profound questions. We're inventing new words such as cosmic humility. These are words that need to be in our culture right now. How do we give words to the future that we want to live in? Well, this is one way.
Hello, everybody. Today we have the pleasure of talking to Stephan Martin, PhD, who is an astronomer, educator, and author who has taught astronomy, physics, and consciousness studies. He is currently director of Deep Time Leadership Program at the Deep Time Network, where he helps develop and facilitate transformative leadership programs that support a flourishing future that works for all. Stephan's first book, Cosmic Conversations, is a multidisciplinary approach to exploring the universe through the lenses of science, spirituality, and culture. And the second book, called Living a Cosmic Life, helps people navigate crisis and change from a cosmic evolutionary perspective. You can find more about Stephan at cosmicconversations.org. So welcome, Stephan, and thank you for doing this interview.
Oh, thank you, Phil, and thank you, Andy, for inviting me. I'm glad to be here with you all.
Yes. So, Andy, why don't you start? Maybe we can talk about what sparked your interest and why we wanted to talk to Stephan in the first place while exploring different facets of cosmology and the universe and communication.
Well, of course, the main area of our interest is the language that I'm still working on with my that was designed by my father, aUI. And I think I don't know how much of an idea you got of it, Stephan, if you were able to look into it a little bit. But of course, we're always looking for connections out in in existing literature. And of course, Cosmic Conversations sparked our interest, and it is both cosmic and conversation, so including communication and the idea of expanding our ability to communicate in in a new way, in a different direction that hopefully is more connected to the elements that exist in the universe, the conceptual elements, and those elements at a very fundamental or basic level. And my father posited that those were universal concepts that were somehow represented in all cultures and in most any language. So it is a way of combining these basic elements to form molecules of meaning. And you have I just this morning I was reviewing the first chapter here in your book with the interview with Brian Swim, and I was just amazed that he really focuses on language very much. And I had skipped before, I had skipped through and I'd looked at other chapters, and it didn't, because they had others that had caught my interest, but here it was really, the focus was on language, and really almost the need for a new way of expressing ourselves, a new language almost, a creative way of reinventing language, and that would kind of fit our new view of the cosmos or the universe, and how the universe is a process and not so much a collection of objects. And so, I mean, we can talk about more how that might apply to aUI, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what your view of that is. And if you want me to review any of that, I can read any of these sections. But I mean, it's here, you're talking about we're in a moment in our understanding of the universe where the human imagination has to plumb to its depths to bring forth new images, new poetry, and new insights to describe reality. Language has to be recreated if we're to express what we're discovering about the universe. So it's time for poets and for the imagination. Some people are depressed, but it means that we're giving birth to new language.
Well, Andrea, you pointed exactly to the part of the book that I would have focused on for our conversation today, because we're in a time when we need a new language, right? Because language shapes consciousness. Language comes out of cosmology. It comes out of people's worldview, right? What they believe to be the framework of reality at that time, place, and culture. So language is really expressing that. And so we're in a time when our language, as Ryan points out in my conversation with him, has become outdated. It hasn't caught up to what we've learned about the universe. And an important thing that we talk about in the book is how language, at least in terms of English, is based on a very Newtonian cosmology, right? So, right, nouns are objects, verbs are interactions between those objects. It's basically Newtonian physics expressed in words. And so we're basically expressing a 16th or 15th century worldview when we speak English. Now we're in a postmodern world. We're in a post modern physics world where we've discovered quantum physics and relativity theory and all these things that sort of challenge ideas about time and space in a fundamental way. And yet the language we use is from an earlier era. And so we can't help but going back to these ways of thinking, being, and interacting, because the language brings us back there. So it's no wonder we haven't solved the problems of war or the problems of insecurity or injustice, because we're expressing older cosmologies where those concepts came out of. So we haven't really come up with, you could say, a quantum language or a language for what we discovered about the nature of the universe. And Andy, as you pointed out, right, the universe is not a place, right? It's not a big room in which things are happening. It's an ongoing creative process. So how do we express that? How do we actually align with that? And I see that's where really your work and Phil's work is coming into, is what's the primordial way that the universe communicates foundationally? And you even mentioned it in talking about elements and molecules of language. Well, I mean, these elements and molecules of our physical beings come out of the universe. And so you would think that in some implicit way, we have the capacity to express the way the universe thinks and the way the universe acts, because it's in our molecules, in our DNA. And can our language, right, the language makeup of our molecules and DNA be aligned with the physical molecules in our DNA that stretch back 13.8 billion years over the course of the universe? So, I mean, I love where we're going with this conversation. It's just so important. And there's so much possibility. Can language be creative, right? Can lead to new insights and new ideas versus keeping us trapped in the past and these old boxes, these old cosmologies, these old ways of being that so many of us are trying to break out of, and I think are breaking out as the current structures in our society begin to collapse and begin to kind of loosen up. This is a time for new language. And as Brian points out, it's a time for creatives, for poets, for artists, for musicians, right? Those who use other ways of expressing words, concepts, and experiences beyond the limitations of written or spoken language. So it's a really rich time that we're having this conversation in. And I love that we're talking about these ideas.
In connection with that, I wanted to ask you, Steve, how much are you familiar with the world of constructed languages, artificial languages? What are some of these successful attempts that you would highlight?
I'm not as familiar as you would be. So I would sort of ask you to kind of highlight those areas where you see overlap.
Yes, because obviously you have heard of, for example, Esperanto, maybe so some other languages that are pretty much well known, and they had some kind of a following, and many of them still do, but of course they haven't been able to replace the other languages. And how would you describe the ideal language, if we try to generalize a little bit, that would be able to actually fulfill this mission that you have described?
I guess we would say, how do we actually represent human experience, right? Someone's human experience and communicate that to another. I mean, our experience is so rich, it's so multidimensional. I don't know if it could be put together in words or symbols. Maybe. I mean, I'm hopeful, but how do you express the gestalt of this moment and communicate that in a rich, effective way to someone else so that they can share into that experience and have some sense of communion or community or some sense of mutual understanding. Uh, yeah, but I love how you're kind of reaching down for kind of primordial experiences or primordial elements of meaning and building a language based on those. So I'd love to hear more about you're working with that, and because that's expressing a new kind of cosmology, a new kind of way of being in the universe that's much more universal, that's much more accessible, and maybe not just to humans, but to any beings out there that have lived experience that can be shared in that way.
Yes,
Of course,
that is the point. So yes, Andrea, could you perhaps, since you have mentioned the elements of meaning, and this is exactly what aUI is composed of, as you know, could you perhaps, Andrea, tell us a little bit more about the elements of meaning? Maybe you could display the chart that we have put together.
Yeah, yeah. Let me
As
share
you should be able to share the screen,
my
yes.
screen here.
Because it would be very
And
interesting to have your opinion on that, Stephen, because it has been
yeah.
a year-long question for us in many ways. What exactly would be the elements of meaning? And we have found a lot of overlap with this system that can be found in aUI and many other attempts at construct this minimal yet at the same time complete list of elements from which the multitude of meanings could be built.
yeah, so these are the 31 elements that my father came up with after studying a dozen different languages. Um, and so, of course, space is all around us, and movement. Now, space, is short, and time is measured in elliptical orbit. So it's not a straight linear time. It is measured in our elliptical orbits of the Earth and Moon. Then movement is kind of reminiscent of a spiral galaxy, and a brickstone of matter, light, the source of light, and the ray spreading out. Do you want me to go through all of them, or just kind of give an idea, Phil?
I think just an idea will give us a sense of it. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes, maybe you
yeah.
can just browse this a little bit.
Just I'll just go through. Yeah, light here, as of course these are all written so that you can write them pretty much in one line. And so this is the source of light, is the highest, it is the brightest sound, it's the brightest vowel. E has the highest frequency, so it represents light. Sound is a sound wave, sinusoidal sound wave travels more slowly. E, so it's held longer. E. Human, similar to the Chinese symbol, the showing the dichotomy, the duality of the human being. That who is fulfilled in the spirit. And is a mysterious back tongue vowel. It is, but the tongue is still high, so it's a high back tongue vowel. So there's this inbuilt phonetic symbolism. The tongue is higher but back, and higher than feeling, because feeling, then the tongue is further down, but still back, because feelings are also mysterious and they kind of well up from below, from our heart. Feeling represented by the heart for blood pulse and heartbeat and so forth, blood pressure, showing our feelings. And of course, life, leaf, the basis of life on Earth. And so here more very simple symbols that are pretty intuitive. Good. Negation negates anything that is below it. Power is a lying down, and a lying down kind of action. Action like a lightning bolt, the most active thing in nature. And Power is more potent, is more of a potential, so it's lying down. Then existence, to exist is to stand out and stand up. If we exist, shh, it's the hush of existence, my father would say. So that's how C is pronounced. Shh, hush, or from shh. And we have, of course, question. And then these are all arranged phonetically. The vowels are the open sounds that have no resistance in airflow. And increasingly, as we go down, they increase in resistance. These are called linguistically or phonetically fricatives. The unvoiced fricatives, and then voiced fricatives that show friction in the sound. And they also show some friction in the concept of relations. There's friction in relations. There's friction in when we have questions and so forth. Actions cause friction, cutting things apart. Then equal, this is the equal sign, kind of written together as one line, equal. And then these are the stops, phonetic stops, where the airflow is completely stopped, p to k, and they show position before, toward above, the line before, p, we are puffing the air out in front of us, and then b here, a bilabial, the lips are pressed together, means together, d and g inside the dot, inside a circle. It's a inside velar sound that feels like it's down in your throat. So my father would say that I think I mentioned that to you, that the microcosm of the mind is reflected, the macrocosm of the universe is reflected in the symbols of aUI, in the microcosm of the symbols of aUI. And so that was his idea, that these would be universal concepts, even to perhaps humanoid extraterrestrials. And so, of course, then these are combined. EO, light, life that depends on light. EO is the word for plant. And EO, moving life. EO then would be animal. And then if you combine E and O, to sense light or to feel light is the word for sight. And then we add action, we get eov, that becomes a verb, to see. And we can add symbols to that. Tov, if we add towards, we add direction here, to. Tov becomes towards, seeing. If you have a direction towards, then you're looking. And we can add time. If you're looking for a long time, you watch, and so forth. And so that gives you a little bit of an idea of how. Oh, and I should say one more example. Fu, this human. So this is this shortened arrow pointing down, pointing at this. And so we have fu, and then that is I, this person, I, and then bu is the together person, the person you're together with is you, and then bru, together, positive human with a positive relationship. Bru would be a friend, and then bru, together, good spirit or mind would be the word for peace. So this is an example of how you can see that if it sounds similar and if the symbols are similar, then it also means similar. Fu, bu, bru, and bru. We're all human beings. We all end in human, and we are united in the spirit. So that is gives you an idea.
Yes.
It's amazing. I love it. I mean, I love that it's like a periodic table of, human or universal experience. Right?
Yes, exactly.
Just the organization and the development of it. And then, combining some of these, it almost sounds like mantras, right? Where you're basically evoking a particular state of consciousness through, the vocalization of those combinations. I mean, much like some of these ancient languages, Sanskrit and others, where there's these sacred symbols or sacred sounds, as you know, that represent particular states of consciousness or also particular cosmologies. So I mean, I love that you kind of bring that in as well.
Yes. Well, that's very insightful. Yes. Yes.
I was just going to say, one other thing I like about it is it leads to new possibilities for experience. For example, many people have probably never thought about feeling light. So sight is a sense of feeling light. I mean, that's a new possibility for the experience that people may not have thought about because they're, expressing a particular language, which has a different meaning for that. So I like that this new possible experience coming out in this expression of language.
Yes, and we should point out that aUI has actually a very extensive vocabulary. It has more than 12,000, I think, currently, or even more words. And this definitely rivals a lot of very well-developed constructed languages and even some natural languages that are spoken all over the world. And it is, on the one hand, simple, and it is easy to get into, but it has limitless possibilities for development of ideas, and some ideas can be expressed in different ways. So that was the original idea. In addition to this trinity of meaning, symbol, which is the visual representation, and sound, which was devised by Dr. John Weilgart.
And meaning. So those are the three: sound, symbol, and meaning. But then also, of course, the Trinity in the sound, the symbol of the spirit. Yeah. There is this thing of fractal semantics, Phil, that you indicated was a subject of interest. That Stephen has shown the similar patterns that appear from galactic web structures to neural networks, and whether aUI's systematic building of complex concepts from basic elements mirror how the universe builds complexity from simple fundamental forces. Would you like to comment on that, Stephen?
Well, I would just say that, what's interesting about this is that in both situations, you have these relatively simple structures, or you could even say algorithms, and somehow there's something newly emergent that comes from that, right? So from these combinations of symbols of language, new forms of meaning emerge that didn't exist previously, and that aren't linearly predictable from the elements. And so we see this possibility of emergence, right, as a new field of study in science, especially with complexity theory in the 70s and 80s and nonlinear dynamics. And so we see where the combinations of, A plus B equals C, which is something that could not have been predicted from either the components of A or B. So that there's new possibilities for creative emergence taking place both in language, but also we see in the universe as well. Because think about, water is the classic example. I mean, who would think that you take hydrogen gas, which is invisible, and oxygen mixed together, and you get the experience of wetness? How do these two elements come to create the emergent experience of wetness or drinking water? I mean, you could study the chemistry of hydrogen and oxygen and never in a million years predict that together in this combination would some new experience that's beyond the elements of both arise out of it. And so I think your language is very exciting because it's pointing to something like that as well, that new dimensions of meaning can come through the interaction of these symbols, simple as they are, but combining them together and combining them with human or conscious experience can lead to new possibilities of consciousness and meaning that we can't even predict now.
Yes, and speaking of neural networks that we have just mentioned, I think it's amazing that this effect of synergy also exists in large language models, for example, in AI. And we do have this black box, so we know actually what goes inside. We know what kind of output we can get, and sometimes it's really random, sometimes it's unexpected. And have you had a lot of experience working with AI recently? What is your opinion regarding that, Stephen? That would be very interesting to know.
I haven't. I was just going to ask you that question, Phil, too. I mean, what would happen if you say programmed or fed in an AI? What possibilities would come out of that? And I don't know if you've experimented with that or not.
Yes. So this is exactly what we wanted, to highlight. Because with the development, as you know, it has been incredibly rapid. And, we were some of the early adopters of that technology. And at first we started to experiment with that, and our whole database contains 600,000 lines of code, essentially, that could be programmed into that. And it was too much of a context window for the early AI models. But recently, for example, with Google's Gemini, we have tried that. And one of the, I believe, great examples of showing why aUI is a logical language was that AI was, number one, able to grasp it, to understand it, and actually it was able to communicate in it. Not only that, but it was even able to come up with new words which made total sense. So that was really amazing.
It was actually quite amazing. I had my doubts. I did not think that I just could not predict that AI would be able to do that. And Phil came up with a whole list of new words that actually make sense, and it's actually also justified. There's an explanation of why AI put it together that way. And
interesting. Do you remember any examples? I'm just fascinated by it.
Ukubwu, and that is a transcendental courage or spiritual fearlessness. So U is spirit, and then Kub is above and apart. So above and apart is beyond. So it takes these roots. So Kub is a root, meaning beyond, and then powerful feeling can be a word for feeling courageous if you're actually feeling that power. So it put those together. It put together this root for courage, and then spirit and beyond. And then let me see, another one is let's see, it doesn't actually translate here is synergy or constructive benefit. That's what it came up with. So B is together matter. That is one of the main forms of matter on Earth. Are there's K above matter that the matter that rises, that's air. Then G is equal matter, the matter that stays equal if it's not disturbed, that is water. And then B is together matter, where the molecules are closer together, and that is a solid. And so in this sense, it used B as a together towards, coming from the word construction. So you put matter together towards something higher. When you build, you make it higher. And that is, so it put together solid towards, and then goodness, so good spirit. And then being passive. The opposite of action is passive. And so, which is a benefit, because when you have a benefit, you receive it, you are passive to it. So it was bet beruv, or bet beru iver. So solid towards goodness, passive. So a benefit, moving together, material things. Oh, and then it has be. Actually, there's two different versions here. That's why I'm a little confused. So moving together, be is also in here, for a good benefit. So that's one of them. And cosmic humility. This was another word. Cosmic humility, a sense of smallness in the universe. And so it took Shanu, is the existence space quantity of the mind, or the spirit. That is one word for cosmic. And then hu, relation, human, so as it is related to the human. And then unam is the opposite of large, is the opposite of large is small, because the opposite of quantity or much. So it's universe relative to the human, small feeling. So that's another one of the combinations. So yeah, it was just amazing. in how it put
Brilliant.
these things together. I mean, more than, than I would think of maybe. So yeah,
Oh yeah.
after, yeah.
But- and putting together in not just random or functional ways, but ways that
No,
express a particular value or ethical
yeah,
perspective as well.
yeah,
So I think that's
yeah.
so
That's
interesting
that's
to have
that's what
that
I'm
come out of an
saying.
AI.
It
Well,
it had depth to it. I mean, it's uncanny. Yeah,
cosmic humility. I mean, what a relationship to the universe that is representing. I mean,
yeah.
Exactly.
It
Yeah. So there are two amazing things about it. Number one, so that's a language that was, conceived even before computers, well, modern personal computers at least existed. And number
yeah.
two, that it was able to grasp, even though we didn't give any extra information, not even a description of how the language function itself, but just the vocabulary, just the dictionary, the plain dictionary that we gave to it. And AI was able to understand the overall perspective of that language, and that's
yeah,
we find really fascinating.
it was a little scary. Yeah.
Well, I have the sense we're just scratching the surface of the potential that's here as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I hope
yeah,
so. Yeah. I mean, that's
yeah,
why we thought you would be a source to perhaps guide us a little further in maybe in what direction we might be able to take. And I did, I looked into that human energy project and I wrote to them. I haven't gotten a reply. And
yeah.
this Brian Swim, it seems to be, he's part of that, right? Isn't he?
He was. He's not anymore. He's more independent these days. But he was with them for a while. There's a number of really, smart people who are still aligned with the project.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know them very well, but I kind of know their work is in the direction of the noosphere and kind of emergent consciousness and everything that represents from Teilhard and um, those that line of thinking. I
Yeah.
also
Yes.
wonder, have you had any contact with the SETI people? Right, SETI, of
Yes.
course, being the field of
Yes.
search for
Yes. In
extraterrestrial
fact,
intelligence. Yeah.
yes. Doug Vakoff is our contact there, and he actually facilitated the translation of the aUI word water because they used the translation of the word water in all lots of different languages and inscribed that into the I don't know
The
the term.
Voyager. Yeah,
Yes,
the Voyager space, the golden record they call it. Yeah.
yes, yes. That was just lifted off in last year, October 24th. We
Wow. So
got a
good. I'm glad
report.
that conversation is happening. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
so aUI
yeah,
was one of the languages, yes, that was featured there,
yeah,
and it's still over there on the NASA website, actually. Yeah,
Oh,
the
that's
3D
terrific.
model with it. Yes, 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 with the aUI
Yeah.
description. Mhm.
Well, and some of the symbols for the OE elements, I mean, they kind of look like glyphs that were put on the record as well. So that's
yeah,
so interesting. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
the other area that occurs to me is I wonder if you've worked with any people working with interspecies communication, like primate communication or communication with mammals or other organisms.
Yeah, not as much because we're just grappling with it as a human. I think I don't, well, no, that's not even true. My goodness. There
Yes,
is,
the dolphins. Yes. Mhm.
yes. Peter Sugarman is actually working with dolphins, and he actually met my father back in 78, I believe, 79 or maybe
Wow.
80, just before he died in 81. So he inspired him to use aUI because he was looking for a language to do experimentation in communication with dolphins. So that's an ongoing thing that he is doing. Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad because, I wanted to mention to you all, I mean, I have a new book coming out next year about a trip I took to Baja, Mexico to see the total solar eclipse last year. And during that trip, we had this amazing encounter with a pod of dolphins in the Gulf of California. And
Ah,
there's clear contact between the different species. I mean, they intentionally sought us out and interacted with us. So there was communication or, a bid for communication happening there. And so it
hmm.
just occurs to me, it's like, well, here's where some kind of universal language could be really useful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, but speaking of extraterrestrials, because very often there is a lot of misconception about aUI, because when people describe it as the language of space, there is this kind of a vision which is very naive, and Andrea will tell you a little bit more. We'll expand a little bit more about that and explain in better words. But again, some people wrongfully believe that Dr. Weilgart said that this language was transmitted to him by extraterrestrials, yes, which is of course not the case, not how it actually was even perceived by him. But in any case, you as an astronomer, as a scientist, and at the same time somebody who is very open to the spiritual side, I think it would be incredibly interesting to know your perspective on life in different parts of the universe. So does it exist? And if it does, do you even think that it is something that we humans could grasp? So, and how would we communicate with those species? That would be very interesting to know, perhaps.
Well, it's a great question, and one, I mean, I don't know, but of course, I feel that life is a universal phenomenon. I mean, just the chances are that it's going to show up everywhere, and so I love that there's in the elements of the language here. I forget how you put photosynthesis, but the image for the plant and the relationship to the sun, it's about energy exchange with the sun through life. So certainly, and so I think aUI would be one of these universal languages we could look to as a way of kind of possibility bridging communication between different life forms, even if they're not all, mammals like us, or they have some different physiology. There might be some bridge or common overlap of shared experience where communication would be possible. So I don't know at this point, and of course, most of SETI in terms of the astronomical community has been focused on interstellar communication through radio waves and other forms of electromagnetic communication. There may be other avenues of communication that we're not aware of or that we're not tuned into, and so I think we need to think broadly about these things, because of course we don't really know what life is fundamentally, and we don't know how common life is in a galactic or universal sense either. So I think we need to be open to a lot of different possibilities in terms of how it might show up. So I think even just thinking about language in a different way, as you're doing with aUI, can lead us down different pathways of wondering how we might make contact or connection with other beings out there. And I don't have anything in particular in mind with that, but if there are maybe symbolic patterns in the universe that are represented universally, that maybe other living organisms could have picked up on those patterns. And that could be a bridge of common experience where there might be some connection, detection, communication. I don't know, but I just love that the language you're working on is elemental. It's primordial in the sense that it's based on elements of not just human experience, but presumably universal experience, right? Beings that exist would have some way of reflecting on their existence. That could be the framework for some shared experience with them. So I don't know, but I'm excited about the possibilities from what you're working on. I don't know how you would transmit this, say through radio waves. I suppose you could break it down into pictograms or some form of coded signal. So I'm curious about your thoughts and ideas as well.
Yes. So to follow up on that, it was very interesting how we started, interacting when we talked about aUI, which was more than 5 years ago now already. And at first, it was very difficult for me to even imagine how somebody who is completely alien to us in many ways would be able to understand such a complex structure. But again, by using AI, we understood that perhaps, of course, the forces, the maybe organisms and such that exist, they might be as intelligent as AI, and maybe much more intelligent than what we have, and that is a possibility. Yes, we listened to your interview where you talked about spirituality and the ideas of some kind of a some higher beings perhaps, and something that exists which is, well, omniscient in many ways. And that, of course, would be a very interesting question. And that is a very interesting model that could give us this idea of how something could be grasped very quickly. And perhaps aUI is something that would be much easier to understand for somebody who is a complete outsider to the civilization. But then again, we don't know exactly.
Yeah.
To follow up on that question, on the question of life outside of our planet, what is the current consensus in astronomy on the scope of the universe? So, because we talk about infinity, I do remember that you mentioned in your interview that the universe or the galaxies, as far as I understand correctly, are expanding. So it's dynamic, as far as we understand. But is the universe really infinite? Because it's incredibly hard for a human to grasp.
You know, it's amazing we've grasped as much as we have. I mean, being on a little rock, you know, around this sun on this galaxy. And we're assuming that the dynamics of physics are universal, and people are testing that to see whether this is really true, that, you know, that the physics we've developed here on Earth is truly expressed in the same way physically with physical laws across the universe, make sure we have it right. And it seems to be. It seems to be that we've gotten some sense of, you know, universal cosmic laws. But we've really just started to scratch the surface in terms of what's out there. I mean, I do stargazing events with the public, you know, a fair amount. I know I point out different parts of the sky, and there's one area in the sky right now in the constellation of Aquila the Eagle, or actually it's in between in the Summer Triangle, if you know that, is a collection of stars. But in that area of the sky, they had a spacecraft called the Kepler spacecraft that stared at that area of the sky for 10 years straight, looking for planets. And the way they detected planets was when the planet went in front of the parent star, it caused a dip in the star's brightness, and they detected that way, and they could determine properties based on that. But just in that area of the sky alone, they found, you know, something like 5,700 planets, 5,700, almost 6,000 planets. And so based on that and other studies, we think there may be somewhere between, you know, 1 and, you know, 100 billion Earth-like planets in our galaxy alone, right? That's a lot of Earth-like planets, not just to mention, you know, the Jupiter-sized planets and the Jovian-sized planets that are out there. So it's an abundant universe with planetary surfaces that are receiving energy from the stars. And of course, we don't know the conditions under which life arises, but it seems like there's a lot of good situations out there where there could be life or life like ours. We don't even know what the possibilities for life are. But ours is just one of 2 trillion galaxies. I mean, 2 trillion in the area of the universe that we know of. And we know we're only looking at a particular observable dimension of the universe, that there's other parts of the universe we can't see. So we don't know whether the universe is finite or infinite at this point. But there does seem to be an evidence that it began in some event we call the Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago, and there's been this cosmic development since then. So, but we don't know. I mean, it's a really exciting time in astronomy and cosmology, because we're discovering things every day that are challenging both our assumptions, but also confirming the incredible effulgent creativity of the universe that we're part of. So I would say don't underestimate anything at this point, or don't assume we know, because there's lots and lots of surprises, you know, ahead for us. Even in the next 10 years with the telescopes that are planned, what they're going to reveal is just going to be stunning.
Yes,
wow.
that is
Well,
amazing.
and I keep also, I mean, I don't know how much credi credibility to put to that, but there are so many reportings, pretty validated reportings of, you know, sightings of UFOs and
Yep.
various things. Do you have more inside knowledge about how credible these things are? Because they seem to be, I don't know, they seem to be pretty credible.
They seem to be, you know, coming out more and more, and I don't have direct experience with them, so I can't really report on that. But
Yeah.
I mean, there's been this kind of declassification process happening with government documents, and then more eyewitness experiences. And I wonder if I wonder if your universal language could be helpful to people who have actually had that experience of an encounter
Huh,
with this in terms of expressing their feeling or how it impacted them, or I just wonder.
huh,
Uh,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, those who have had interactions or encounters, could this be a way of maybe framing their experience? Because they might say, "Oh, I can't express it in words." Well, could you express it in concepts? Was it more like this, right? So giving them, kind of a conceptual palette based on aUI might be helpful
Yeah,
for them.
yeah.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah,
it might be worth contacting someone so that maybe they'll be able to talk to them next time.
yeah, exactly, right. If they had this kind of a, this palette, I mean, could they've had a conversation or express some basic
Yeah,
terms? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
I kind of, oh, no, I just wanted
no,
to
no,
say
go
that
ahead, please.
I kind of tried to veer away from that aspect because we had this author who sensationalized this story of my father's, acquiring
Yeah,
aUI, and that was I think unfortunate because that's not where the focus should be. I mean, the focus is not that it's that's not the first area of focus. Our first area of focus is really his basic purpose was peace through understanding was his intent. And so even let's just start here on human on earth where there's plenty uh, of communication that can be improved. um, but so it was, yeah, he sent this author sensationalized, so people kind of went with that and said that he had had
Mm.
this encounter, but it was more of a, I think it was a boyhood dream that he imagined that an extraterrestrial spoke this language, or but he definitely put effort into intentionally coming up with with these elements of meaning, and you can see in his basic first initial framework that was in from 1952, where there's some rudimentary symbols where the two dots were not connected yet and so forth. So he did work on it and so forth. But did you have anything else, Phil, that you were
Yeah,
gonna?
I was just going to follow up on that. It sounds like your father was coming from a place of cosmic humility, whether the
Yeah.
word had been invented for that at the time. But I mean, I just love
Well,
he kind of had that. He had that spirit that he was coming from.
and the amazing thing is that this word that the AI, sorry, came up with that, whereas one of the words that he, as an example, gave as an example of a word that is not directly represented in English is the word for, it was crevaux. It was a high, it was above, so the dot is above the line, que and good, passive feeling, a sense of this um, uh, a passive receiving of when you look into the starry sky. And so Crevaux was this sense of smallness also, and humility, and it's similar to what the AI came up with. So
yeah. So that's yes. So following up on stargazing, it is very humbling, of course, to think about it, and that there is still a sense of fascination. And as we know, Stephen, you are also an educator, and I wanted to ask you about this because aUI was actually conceived back in what we could have called the space age, if I understand correctly. And we have all been obsessed. So I grew up, essentially my parents did grew up in the space age, and therefore I also grew up with science fiction and this fascination about space. But I currently feel, maybe this is a kind of a wrong idea, that nowadays younger people are not that excited about space, and perhaps it is not that much publicized nowadays. And it kind of feels a little bit like losing the grasp of the dream, which would be, of course, a shame, considering that the technology is developing. So how do you think we can actually enhance that? How can we maybe make space more mainstream, even so to say, and astronomy, of course, to raise the awareness and interest, in your opinion?
There's one practical way, which is to kind of spend more time outside under the night sky. I mean, people have been increasingly indoors. It's been an indoor culture, and people have been interacting with screens and with technology more and more, especially younger people. And so I try to, do these stargazing events just to give people a practical example. Like, look what you're missing. Look what you're not seeing when you're inside. Of course, there's wonderful aspects of technology as well, and they've brought so much, communication between cultures and sharing culture around the world. But the whole universe is out there, every night. And so I encourage people to go outside, look under the night sky, and just feel what that feels like. Because when I'm stargazing with people, people get very quiet and they get very humble and they start asking these really profound questions. And so I think we need these spaces as a culture to kind of reorient us to a larger perspective, to something beyond, kind of the inward directed technological narcissism that our culture tends to be focused on. It's like all about humans, all about interacting through screens. And of course, we see where that's led to in terms of the state of the world. But just take some time out and let's become indigenous again, right? Spending time on the earth, looking up at the heavens, right? The night sky, which of course birthed us through supernovae, through, stellar evolution that led to life on earth. Let's look back to where we came from and then begin to reflect in a new way on who we are and where we're going as a species. One thing that the space age gave us is it gave us something, higher to aim for as a culture that brought people together in a new way. And Neil deGrasse Tyson has talked about this as well. It's like we need something as a culture that's higher than our usual squabbles, something, that represents a higher dimension of humanity to aim for. And of course, for me, I'm always oriented towards the night sky and the big picture. But, I think that's something that maybe we can start reaching for as a culture. And maybe this language could help express that or give us some directionality towards that. The fact that we're inventing new words such as cosmic humility, right? I mean, these are words that need to be in our culture right now, right? The cosmic dimension of that. So, I mean, I love that your language or the language of aUI is evolving and coming up with new expressions of what we're yearning for at this time, even if we don't know it consciously as a culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that also you have talked about the bridging of language between science and spirituality. And I think that is definitely something that aUI has very much in for instance the I took I do like to listen to Eckhart Tolle. At least I've listened to him in the past.
Sure.
Yeah. And of course this fundamental error that we have in our thinking that between our identity, our form identity, he talks about between a form identity and our essence identity. And that is an example of something that can be distinguished in aUI, that so it's not just Fu, this human person, but Fu, the spirit person, this spirit or existence as a spiritual existence, Shu, and or Fu Shu, that would be the definition for the essence identity, the spiritual, this mind, this spirit, and existence spirit, the existential spirit, Fu Shu. So that is one example, and then cosmic that you bring up. Cosmic is Hobsham. Hobsham, the relation of harmony in the world. So Hob is relation, a good feeling, together is harmony. So, and then Sha is the existence space, the world, the space that we exist in. And that is related, our harmonious relationship in this world is the word for cosmos. So, and this is just, there are many variations that are possible. That doesn't mean that that's the only definition. That is one definition. That is his definition. But it's amazing when you work with aUI that how much flexibility there is and how much one can adjust to different contexts. So it just with a few symbols. And I mean, I wouldn't have kept working with aUI so long if I hadn't been continuously amazed that yes, I can actually adjust it just a little bit and not make it too long or anything, but to be able to adjust to a context. And I wondered, you did what I brought up at the beginning, you talked about the indigenous cultures, the language of the indigenous cultures, that they are more process oriented. And I wondered if you knew anything more exactly about that, because I'm wondering about whether aUI would be able to be adaptable in that way, that to be more process oriented versus noun oriented.
Yeah, I mean, you would know more about the specifics than I would, but for example, I've heard that and I may not get this right, in the Navajo language, right? It's primarily verbs, and so you wouldn't say Steve, you would say Steve-ing is happening, and so it just is pointing to kind of a present moment, process-oriented experience.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a book that came out some years ago by F. David Peat, who was a colleague of David Bohm's, a quantum physicist as well, and he went and studied among the Blackfoot, and he wrote a book called Blackfoot Physics, where there's these really difficult quantum conundrums. Like people have a hard time understanding, well, what does quantum physics mean? It doesn't really make any sense. Well, it doesn't from a Newtonian perspective, but for indigenous peoples and in their language, it makes perfect sense. Oh, we get that, right? So what seems like a paradox in one conceptual framework is very easily expressed in others and very natural. And so there might be some indigenous languages that would be very resonant with aUI, and that were the natural overlaps, and where spirit and matter are not so separated, that they're expressed in the same word for breath and spirit, such as in ancient languages as well. Yeah. So I would love for you to kind of explore that with indigenous people and indigenous speakers and see what they think about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, aUI is the idea is that we still, even though that our words, our concepts may be different for different things, we are still united by this basic alphabet that is universal. So that you could still, if you wanted to say Steving, you could say that in aUI. You could say use active over time. Vam is the ending for making it a kind of a present participle type active adjective almost.
And you also have mentioned, I wanted to add something about quantum physics. And of course, there has been a lot of discussion about quantum computing. And this is a breakthrough we have been waiting for, actually, I believe for more than a decade now. And we've heard from different companies, but still there hasn't been any kind of, practical use, at least in the way that would be adaptable to not just everyday experience, but something even which would be much more experimental. And we will see whether it actually is the case. And this can change the whole paradigm of thinking. Again, just like neural networks have changed what computing is nowadays. And I have worked a lot with different software engineers, and they said that this essentially crossed out everything that had been done before for decades. So perhaps with quantum computing, we will also be able to, in some way, change everything, including actually even our mindset and how we perceive things. So that
I mean, quantum computing and AI could be a very powerful combination together.
Yes.
Yeah. And and maybe there'll be a Google Translate function for aUI at some point, if it could even be expressed that way. But wouldn't that be interesting to kind of have it integrated in people's daily lives that way?
Yeah, so this is something we have been working on, and in the experimental, I could say stage, we are trying to build that. So hopefully this will also align with the development of technology, and we will be able to have something which is a ready-made solution for aUI translation as well.
Well, because humans are being shaped by technology, not just the other way around. So, the kind of technology we use and how we use it is also shaping us in terms of who we're becoming in the future, as does language as well. So, the combination of language and technology is a very powerful one.
Yes.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yes. So thank you very much again, Steve. It has been very inspirational, and again, a great reminder to, look up at the sky. And when I just think about this, it feels like going back to a maybe safer place in some way, maybe full of some great childhood memories, and thinking about, for example, teaching my children about space, and this this gives some kind of metaphysical comfort as well, and also a lot of things to think about in terms of science. So thank you very much, and
Thank you as well. What a wonderful conversation. I love that we had some emergence happen, throughout this, and something new came out of this.
yes.
Thank you
Okay.
so much. Thank you so much, Steve. This is wonderful to have a connection with you and your broader perspective, and that gives us also more to think about. So
I was going to, thank you both for your work, because I mean, this is imagining, one possible future that's very positive, very hopeful, and very much in a life forward direction. And so, how do we give words to the future that we want to live in? Well, this is one way with aUI.
So yes,
thank you so
Stephen
much.
could be found on Cosmic Conversations if you Google that. And Stephen, we're also waiting for your third book that will come out, as you have said, soon.
Two books, one on a cosmic dimension of ritual, and one on how to apply cosmic principles in everyday life, which is expressed through
Oh,
this travel journey with this
wow.
journey to Baja. So two books next year. So
Oh
it's a
Ah,
my.
pretty big year. Yeah.
great,
Oh,
great. Yeah, so that's
wow.
something to look forward to. And thank you very much again. Well, goodbye.
Thanks so much.